Like 2007, another number 2 team has fallen. How fitting is it that this season, after having no fans in stadiums, after having very little practice when it comes to tackling and defense, how fitting is it that this season is thrown into complete chaos after just 1 year of abnormality? This Iowa and Purdue game and many other Big Ten games in Week 7, actually I'd say all of them, in some way, shape, or form represented this. Today I'm going to be talking about my perspective, reaction, and my analysis of all the Big Ten games in Week 7. If you're new to this channel, make sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell, and also comment your thoughts down below. I love to have conversation, and I love to just reply to comments, and I love it when people disagree. So let's get right into it. Purdue and Iowa, I'm going to try and go anywhere in between, like 2 to 3 minutes per game, because there is 5 of them. So starting off with Iowa and Purdue. This game was, in a certain sense, disgusting, in my opinion. Like, this game, looking at it, Purdue winning by 17, completing 75% of their passes, throwing for 378 yards and 2 touchdowns. I don't know what to say. This game proves that Iowa, period, amen. If they do not win the turnover battle, they lose. And just period, amen. That's it. And this impacts, I think, a lot of the Big Ten West, because now Iowa can't really afford another loss to a team, to an average Big Ten West team, without having their championship game spot put in jeopardy. Which is ironic because, they just beat Penn State, who, with Clifford, might be one of the better teams in the country. Actually is definitely one of the better teams, top 10 teams in the country, with Clifford under center. They just beat that team. They physically bullied Penn State. That's why Penn State got a bunch of injuries, make no mistake, was because Iowa was willing to sacrifice some of their own dudes to take out some of Penn State's dudes, and it worked in their favor. And in the end, as a result, Iowa, they have players injured. Riley Moss was out, not even on the game's depth chart. And as a result, Purdue, who is sneakily underrated, and people were insulting the spread for being this close, and in the end, Purdue capitalized off of an injured Iowa, defensively handicapped Iowa, and won 24-7. Purdue outgained Iowa 24-17 on first downs. They were more efficient on third down. They stopped Iowa on a fourth down, which was controversial, but that wouldn't have really helped Iowa, besides allowed them to score double digits and make the loss look better. And Purdue only had 1 turnover, which was one of their receivers was diving to the pylon, and the ball came out and hit the pylon, which resulted in a touchback. Purdue also outgained Iowa in rushing yards. They had 10 more rushing yards. They gained a tenth of a yard more than Iowa on the ground, which doesn't mean much, but still, I was thinking, wow, Purdue shut down Iowa's run. Purdue ran enough to gain the respect of Iowa's defense. Iowa was constantly trying to pressure O'Connell, and at moments just tried to, come forth. And O'Connell just calmly, when he needed to, when he was flushed out of the pocket, calmly ran out, or calmly stayed in or stepped up and threw well. And David Bell tore up Iowa's secondary. So that's the Iowa game. Iowa now has a lot of questions. Purdue, despite winning this game, because of their head-to-head loss against Minnesota, is not first in the West. If the season ended today, Minnesota would go to the championship game. And that's where I'm going to take us next. Nebraska and Minnesota, This game, as a Michigan fan, irritates me beyond belief. And it should irritate you if you're a State fan too, or an Oklahoma fan. If you're a fan of any of the top 10 teams that nearly lost to this team, I lost my mind yesterday seeing that Nebraska once again had special team issues and failed on a 4th and goal. And also the fact that Martinez took a safety. That irritated me to no other end. Nebraska also won the turnover battle, and in the 4th quarter looked like they were going to mount a comeback. Nope. Another blown game by the Cornhuskers. I can't even believe it. It's horrible. Looking at Nebraska's schedule, they lose to Minnesota, who now looks good. Nebraska, you have 4 more games. Purdue, Ohio State, at Wisconsin, and not Iowa. You could realistically go 3-9, at which point I do not care how much improvement we saw earlier. Frost should be fired. And honestly, after that game yesterday, it is my opinion that Scott Frost's time in Nebraska needs to end. It needs to end. Martinez, this game has once again proven that if you can shut down Martinez, who made no turnovers, by the way, Martinez passed for 1 touchdown after starting off pretty slow. He warmed up a little to go 18 of 33, 241 yards passing, and a touchdown, and he was actually held to negative 17 rushing yards. If you can hold Martinez in one aspect, because Martinez is Nebraska's offense, you beat him. Tanner Morgan had one of his best games of the year, going 20 of 24, 209 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 picks. And granted, those 2 picks kind of ruin it in a certain sense, but he by far had one of his better games. He, this year, before this game, only completed 52% of his passes. In the game against Nebraska, Tanner Morgan completed 83% of his passes and had a 167.3 rating, which is easily his best all year. Minnesota, they ran it well, they passed it well, and besides the turnovers, Minnesota had a pretty good game because Nebraska, before this game, still looked like they could be a decent or good football team. And now it is just proof positive that they are anything but that in a certain sense. So I don't really know what to think about this game. I mean, Scott Frost maybe should be gone. This is a horrible look for Nebraska. Minnesota, you have hope. You have absolute hope to possibly go to Indy this year, which I did not think would happen. But hey, it's crazy. The West is in chaos. The next game I want to look at is Michigan State, Indiana. We're going through just the Big Ten today, guys. Michigan State and Indiana is interesting to me because I thought it would be close, like 7 to 10 points, and I predicted the same against Rutgers. My policy for Michigan State before Michigan was Michigan State's a team that finds ways to win. I'm just going to project that they'll win by a touchdown or just 10 points, barely double digits, because they find ways to win. And indeed, this game proves Michigan State finds ways to win, and like Michigan, doesn't give up. The issue is, looking at between them and Michigan, whose strength of schedules continue to collapse, albeit Michigan State's collapses farther and faster than Michigan's has, these two teams have their moments. And this game, by far, was Michigan State's worst moment this year. This was worse than Rutgers versus Michigan. This was worse than either of these two teams facing Nebraska. This was horrible. And granted, Indiana, all of their losses are to now top 11 teams, but still. Indiana constantly turnovers the ball. Not turnovers. That doesn't make any sense. Pardon me. Indiana constantly gives the ball away, and they constantly have an inability to score in the red zone. Touchdowns in the red zone specifically. Indiana scored their first touchdown against a Big Ten opponent against Michigan State, which is proof positive that Michigan State's defense is just nothing to be proud of. And not only that, but Indiana outgained Michigan State in total yards, 322-3. In all their other games against Big Ten opponents, Indiana was dominated on offense. This wasn't the case here. And Michigan State, to their credit, they have a bend but not break scheme where they don't care if you gain on them as long as they can stop you inside the 20. And this is beautiful and all. But the issue is, with their offensive performance, that almost killed them. Letting Indiana get all those field goals and such, they almost beat you by basically just scoring field goals. And Peyton Thorne looked human. The receiving core looked human. The running back looked human. All your explosive positions were neutered by a team that has no offense, by a team whose defense is out there on the field, likely knowing that they need to win the game. The offense can't win it for them. So looking at this game, Michigan, the top 10 in general this year is a lot weaker than it has been, in my opinion. So Michigan State and Michigan are still probably top 10 teams. Michigan had a bye. But Michigan State just doesn't look that good heading into the bye week, heading into Michigan. They have a lot to work on. In Indiana, looking at your upcoming schedule, Indiana might struggle to reach a bowl game, especially with their quarterback situation. Both of them love to turn over the ball, and in the end, the turnovers were actually the reason for the loss. You don't throw that pick six, Indiana wins the game. Not kidding you. So that's that game. That's Sparty. But luckily, as a Michigan fan, I get to possibly see if Michigan beats Northwestern, and I think we will crush Northwestern, but I'll preview that game this week. Thankfully, we get to see an undefeated matchup for the Paul Bunyan Trophy. But now, back to the games that were played, we move on to Rutgers and Northwestern, of which I will spend a little time on this because this game doesn't matter at all. This is like the two bottom feeders fighting it out. Ryan Helinski had a good game, 18 of 33, 267 yards and 2 touchdowns. This game is proof positive that I think Rutgers was playing Michigan off momentum and that Ohio State loss broke them. And Rutgers has basically lost all control looking at this game. Northwestern here winning the turnover battle and all that stuff. And also Rutgers, and I forgot this about Michigan State too. Michigan State has a lot of penalties. They are an undisciplined team, and it shows in their coverage and it shows in their penalties. Rutgers is actually the same way. 11 penalties of 90 yards compared to Northwestern's 4 penalties of 50. The discipline, everything fell apart after you realized, oh shoot, we're Rutgers. We played Michigan close. Ohio State blew us out. We can't beat nobody of significance. And that might be a little cruel, and I do think Greg Schiano will lead this program in the right direction. But looking at how if you can't beat Northwestern, I don't know who you're going to beat besides maybe Maryland. Look to be in a similar position that Nebraska is in at the moment. And Northwestern outgaining you 402 yards to 222, having 8 more first downs than you, having the better quarterback, having, the better run game. It's just crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Northwestern here might be on somewhat of a come up, and seeing how, they lost to Michigan State, they lost at Nebraska, which is a hard place to win at regardless, and all that, Northwestern might actually be in a position to possibly reach a bowl game, despite their horrible performances. And now finally we move on to Wisconsin. Wisconsin, I watched that game, and I wanted to watch that game because I found it very, very interesting. Wisconsin, in a similar way to Michigan State, their defense won them that game. Granted, Wisconsin's defense is far superior, but also granted to Michigan State's credit, they don't have the atrocious offense that Wisconsin has. Wisconsin here had 310 yards of offense, relatively equal time of possession to Army, 5 more first downs, each at a turnover. These are pretty even teams. And mind you, Army lost to Ball State. Wisconsin here led 13-0 at halftime. They had a few good drives, and the only reason they won this game was because Leo Chanel recovered a fumble. That's why they won, is because Wisconsin's defense finally came up big, and forced a turnover, which is something they were criticized for all year. Wisconsin was 3 of 10 on third downs. They had 198 rushing yards, 4.6 yards per carry, probably one of their best rushing games against a decent opponent. I'm not counting Illinois or Eastern Michigan, all year. In 43 rushing attempts, only 15 passing attempts, which shows me that Paul Chryst is like, hey, we just work out the issues on the O-line and the running back. We can do this. And their freshman running back, Braylon Allen, good move by them to get him a good amount of carries because he did pretty well. From what I saw, he did better than Malusi, did better than Garendo. Berger, I know, is off the team, but you have a decent amount of running back potential there. Allen, you got John Chanel, the fullback. Wisconsin still has a lot of potential running the football. And if they get back to that, have a stronger offensive line and find their identity, as long as Mertz doesn't fumble as often or throw picks as often as he did earlier in the year, Wisconsin in conference, they only have 2 conference losses to Michigan and Penn State, who are really good football teams. They can win out. That sounds insane, especially with Iowa, Purdue, and Minnesota on the schedule. But they can do it. And it would be very interesting indeed if they did. And Army, not going to talk about them much because they aren't a Big Ten team, but they fought hard. And in the end, again, the fumble is what won Wisconsin this football game. Army did everything they could in their power. Wisconsin ran them out, wore them down, and in the end came up with a much-needed win to get back to 500 and get back to having some respect. That's all I have to say. Just my brief 2 cents and breakdown on all of these games in the Big Ten. If you like this video, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Again, join this awesome community, and comment your thoughts down below. Thank you all for watching. My full, not just for Big Ten, but full Week 7 analysis, losers, winners, the usual, is all coming out tomorrow. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you around.